What's a fun psychology fact? If you are having a panic attack, eat something sour. It switches your mind off the panic and onto the sour. You go where you look. It's called target fixation and it works everywhere, especially useful for driving, cycling, motorcycling, etc. For example, if you want to avoid something, don't look at it, look at the path that avoids it. It even works in video games, which is just mind-blowing. Asking someone to do a small favor for you will usually make them like you better if they do it. So very small favor gives them a feeling of protectiveness over you. This effect is why you will die for the person who asks you to watch their laptop or bag when you're at the library or coffee shop. The tiny indebtedness of the masking turns you from a stranger into a protector and you will watch their stuff like a hawk. Babies will look to their parents' emotions to determine their next move. There is a window of time where, if a baby is about to crawl off a cliff, and they look to their parent and the parent is encouraging, they'll crawl right off. If the parent looks scared, the baby will not crawl off. This was done with a glass panel covering the cliff. Part 1 promise. If you think someone is staring at you, do a loud sniff. There is a pretty good chance that they will nervously mimic the sniff if they are afraid of getting caught. Sometimes I do it on purpose when pooping in a crowded public restroom. Sometimes I wonder if there's an unspoken rule about not yelling at someone to blow their nose when they are blowing something from some other orifice. Telling other people about your goals in order to keep yourself accountable is far more likely to result in failure than keeping your goals to yourself, which is completely opposite popular wisdom. I learned that in great courses. Outsmart yourself. Brain-based strategies to a better you. It's much easier to turn a crowd authoritarian than you believe. Ron Jones, a teacher in California, demonstrated this in 1987 by turning an entire class fascist. The movement got out of control by the third day, where the entire school went boot stomping, and he had to move them all in the gymnasium to tell them the truth. In order to shut it down, Google the third wave. It has to do with our innate desire to fit in, combined with our natural competitive nature. Authoritarianism and fascism offers an easy way to accomplish both. The placebo effect is real. That's why you test things against it. More expensive placebos work better than cheap ones. There's a reason why we want to squeeze cute things, babies, puppies, etc. The positive emotion can sometimes be too overwhelming to handle, so a little aggression balances out that emotion. When the sound wave frequency of certain sounds are close together, your brain will register it as either one. Like when you think you hear a phone ringing or a voice, but you're actually hearing the hum of a generator/computer. Can't think of any other examples. Not sure what this term is called, but learned in Psych 101 or something in college. My teen kid got a Chihuahua puppy the other day. I'm still training a 73-pound puppy myself, and it was agreed this is her dog, and I won't help. At least until both are trained and used to each other, and they can be fine together while kid is at work or school. This works out because my dog can't go upstairs where my kid mostly lives. Anyway, what I've learned during the last 2 school days is that the filter on the fish tank sometimes sounds just like that pup. She is 7 months and like 2 pounds and will do this tinier woo to go outside. It took me until halfway through today to notice my dog looks up there every time she's actually making the noise. So I can stop making needless trips upstairs to look at a sleeping chihuahua because the fish filter made a certain kind of bubble. Because yeah, if she needs out I'm gonna take her out lol. Okay, thank you. You can never fully trust your memory. False memory is a thing, and it says that your memory is very malleable and memory can be implanted. Your internal affective state alters your visual perception. For example, people made to feel anxious or unsettled in some way will estimate the steepness of a slope as greater than people who didn't have this elicited state. It's basically beneficial for us to overestimate challenges in our environment when we may not have the resources to deal with them. Like, from an evolutionary perspective, there are also studies where we perceive objects as closer or further away from us depending upon whether we own them or perceive they are owned by someone else. The Stanford prison experiment and the Milgram experiment didn't really show what they're frequently said to show. In the Stanford prison experiment, Philip Zimbardo had selected the students to be guards He presented it as random and it wasn't, and coached them to be cruel. They didn't just become cruel because they were made authority figures. In the Milgram experiment, participants who delivered a lethal dose of electricity at the order of an authority generally said they knew they wouldn't actually be electrocuting a human to death as part of a laboratory study at a university. They just played along because that seemed to be what they were getting paid for. So yes, they did go along with an authority, but they thought they were doing improv. So anyway, those are fun facts because they help overturn the more pessimistic view of human nature. Given the choice between experiencing boredom and physical pain, people will way more often than not choose physical pain. That's how revolting boredom is to the mind. Your jaw has the power to bite clean through your fingers, but your brain and nerve endings won't let you do it. Take nothing for granted, and take nothing too seriously. Taking things and people seriously is injurious to mental health. Apparently people with depression have a more accurate idea of the state of things around them than people without depression. People with depression don't see things as worse than they really are. It's that they lack the ability to use denial on themselves. Saying words that mean the same but are in different languages will make you feel differently. I understand that some languages actually are "happier than others." If you're mad at someone, don't flip them off. Instead, give them a thumbs down and a frown. It's much more hurtful. You can retrain your brain to experience suffering as pleasure, thus making the general existential suffering of life into a blissful experience. Depending how long you look at someone, it can either be seen as a sign of attraction or aggression and intimidation. Even if it's just too long of a stare, someone could perceive you as a bad person. Here's a fun one: find and let light around you somewhere, or any small fixation point, and try to look at it as stably as you can, without moving your eyes. You'll find your vision slowly fades out, and you effectively go blind. Don't worry, it restores as soon as you move your eyes again, haha. It happens cause your brain basically uses eye movements to update its rendering of the visual world. So if your eyes are stable, and there's no changes to the visual input, it presumes there ain't nothing to see. Another couple on a similar theme that always stuck with me: peeps are more likely to give to charity / donate to homeless if they smell freshly baked bread vs an unpleasant smell like trash. Similarly, they are more likely to buy French wine if French music is played over the speakers in a supermarket vs say German music. Turns out there's all sorts of subtle influences for our behavior we just don't realize. If you're doing a boring task and getting paid to do it, you rate it as more boring than if you had not been paid for it. This is because of cognitive dissonance created by doing something you don't enjoy. If you're being paid, it makes sense to do something not enjoyable. Otherwise you decide you must enjoy it, or you wouldn't be doing it for free, and that's why your hobbies shouldn't be your career MO. Allegedly it's more of a sociology thing, but once you've started a habit you tend to not realize you're even doing it anymore. Going to work may mean turning the car off and running back to double check you locked the door. Misplacing a daily carry item may mean not knowing you forgot it until you need it. It is highly illogical to judge someone off of one encounter, especially if it's a chance encounter. We often believe a person's actions to be a reflection of themselves and not a response of their life experiences and other third-party factors. Example, if someone is mean to you, you might assume they are a mean person, which could be true, but they could also just be in a sour mood from being fired from their job. Another is learning about psychological facts even in passing can alter how you act. Another, if you're bleeding to death, it is better to have few people around you than a whole crowd. This is because when observers are in a large crowd, they are less likely to intervene. IQ tests were popularized by Americans in the early years of America, and culturally biased IQ tests were routinely used on immigrants, which lead to a lot of immigrants being labeled as slow or handicapped. IQ test also helped fuel eugenics, which is the ideology that people with good genes should mate. Bad eugenics, which is a form of eugenics that seek to prevent people with bad genes from mating, was heavily fueled by IQ tests, and in America, people would go into surgery for a simple procedure and come out unfertile because the doctor rendered them that way without their consent. This was because the patient was labeled slow or handicapped by IQ tests, Most IQ tests only test for what they test you on. For example, a IQ test that tests your memory isn't measuring your IQ, but rather your memory skills.